Today we're going to talk about remote location operations. Looking forward to this because I've been watching the product managers talk about this on the release notes over the past couple of months. So like seeing this stuff in action is going to be pretty exciting. So looking forward to what you guys have for us today. We'll have some announcements, then we'll get into it. There's always Q&A. If you have questions and you want to add them in the chat, please do that. If you'd like to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen there, you can do that as well. We'll watch both places. Anytime you have a question while we're speaking, go ahead and ask it. We'll roll them all to the end and we'll answer them all at the end of the demo. But yeah, anything you're thinking about, give us a shout, put it in the chat, put it in the Q&A. You can also watch all of our previous demo roundups on demand. They're on pagerduty.com/resources. There's a lot of stuff in resources. So if you're looking for past webinars, if you're looking for other things that we've done, if you're looking for ebooks or other information, that library is huge. So you may find what you're looking for there. But that's where you will find all of our previous demo roundups, including the last one, which was an absolute hoot with Justyn and Bobby. So yeah. Coming up, if you will be joining us in Las Vegas at reInvent, you will not be able to miss us. We will have a very big presence in the exhibit hall at the Venetian. We're looking forward to chatting with everybody. We have some cool swag that we're bringing. We have some cool games that we're working on for the booth. Plus, you'll be able to like hang out, get a demo, chat with us. We'll have in-booth theater presentations. So we have a lot of stuff planned for reInvent week after next in Las Vegas. Won't be able to miss us. We have a pretty big space there on the exhibit floor this year, which is pretty exciting. Last year we were kind of tucked in the back and you had to come looking for us. You will find us. We also have Kubernetes operations with Runbook and PagerDuty operation webinar coming up. That one's going to be super exciting to see some new products-based stuff that the guys have been working on. That will be coming out the 12th of December. Looking into January, we'll be looking at automation at scale, a deep dive into distributed automation, lots of automation stuff coming up on there, so you can sign up for that one as well. You can always find all of our events at pagerduty.com/events, and any of our community events, you can hit us up on the comments at community.pagerduty.com/events, and we'll list things there for folks to find us when they're out and about. Stop by, say hi, get a sticker, be great. If you would like to participate in stuff with us, we would love to talk to you. We love to hear how folks are having success transforming their teams, transforming the way they work with PagerDuty. So if you would like to share your story with us, we want to hear from you. So you could be part of our community spotlight. We'd like to show off what you're doing, showcase how things are improving for your team with PagerDuty. And if you haven't yet joined the PagerDuty Commons, please join us over there. That's our new forum. We relaunched in September on a whole new platform. It is so much nicer than the last platform. And we'd love to see you over there. We're happy to answer questions, hang out with you over there. You can chat with us. If you've got things that you want to know, want help with, join up there and we'll get you the answers that you need. So I'll turn it over to you guys. Justyn, Corbin.
Corbin, I believe it's over to you.
Yeah, I'll start us off. Thanks everyone for attending. So some of you may know with PagerDuty Operations Cloud, we've got seven different solution themes that we find resonate well across customers and what they're trying to achieve. For today, we're going to be focused on specifically remote location operations automation. And we can go to the next slide. Some example use cases of remote location operations. Think about places like hotels, right? They've usually got a bit of equipment on site. Perhaps the staff in the hotel, they're there for running the hotel, right? They're not necessarily going to be IT people. Same thing with hospitals, right? You can have doctors' offices spread throughout an area. And again, it's going to be staffed with, doctor and hospital staff, not necessarily folks that are going to, know how to reset your router if something goes wrong. Or maybe you've got a few VDI sessions there running, right, that sometimes need to be managed. We can also think about companies with satellite offices, right? Everyone at headquarters, right? Usually there's a local IT staff there that can help, they're sending out laptops, troubleshoot your issues. But satellite offices don't always have that luxury. So, you're faced with, again, relying on folks who aren't primarily IT professionals to help troubleshoot things, or you're potentially paying for, third party, engineers to come in and handle things for you, which, can get quite expensive as you scale it out. Another thing that comes top of mind, use cases for remote location operations, are manufacturing plants. They've got uh, different types of equipment. A lot of it is, network connected today. Um, and just being able to, manage those things, grab diagnostics, maybe run some remediation steps, right? If something happens. And I'm sure, Justyn, you've probably got a few examples that come to mind. So I left the and more there, right? So folks, as you think about it, it's not just limited to this set of particular use cases. Um, but anywhere where you don't have folks necessarily there to handle, but you've got equipment that needs to be managed, are the types of use cases we'd be looking at here.
Yeah, let me just add one because I think it's kind of cool. I have a customer who works with one of these autonomous shops. So it's not as if there aren't any IT staff on site. There really aren't any staff on site. Maybe, security or maybe other people like that. But there are literally no people and just these, sort of remote operations. So one of their issues, I'm sure we'll talk about this, but one of their issues that is if a piece of IT goes down, they've got to figure a way to remotely deal with that, but also at scale. You can't just throw people at these problems. Well, you can, but it gets expensive quickly, and it's just not a good use of their time. So maybe we can talk about that a little more as we go through. But yeah, I just like the idea of this shop there with nothing but cameras in there that scans the items that you're buying, and then as you walk out you're automatically charged for it, and it's great for introverts that don't really want to interact with anybody on a social level, and you can get your stuff and move on.
Oh
uh,
yeah, absolutely. Moving on um, to our next slide here, we'll take a look and let me see. Here we've got the PagerDuty Operations Cloud reference architecture. Now, folks who are familiar with PagerDuty will know, we started off in incident management, helping folks replace pagers. We've since broadened the scope of things we can do, and as you can see here, we've got a breadth of capabilities that make up the PagerDuty Operations Cloud. If you do one more click, Justyn, today we're going to be focused on the bottom part here, and I've got to zoom in. So event-driven automation and what that means. These systems will potentially need to integrate with your different ITSM tools or ticketing systems. Uh, Using event-driven automation, right, as things are happening in the environment, we can automatically start to gather diagnostics, start to look at what the issue could be, and then play into that, also do incident actions or remediation, right? If diagnostics come back and our health check's not clean, what steps do we usually take to troubleshoot that and try to, get the system or service back online? We can automate all that so that we can take the human out of the loop. It can happen at machine speed, and it's in response to events that are happening inside your environment. We do also have the ability to do things like scheduled tasks. So if there's a recurring, if you're using cron jobs or Windows, task scheduler today, we can help with that. And if there's, recurring things, maybe batch file processing, copying things around, maybe you just want to do a diagnostic check in the morning before things kick off to make sure everything's healthy. We can certainly help with that as well. Additionally, we'll see, with that, we can integrate with secrets and vault keys, vault storage. So, you don't have to be putting passwords and, other sensitive API keys, in scripts. We can integrate with those key vaults and pull that data automatically. Anything you wanted to add there, Justyn?
No, I mean, no, I mean, I think, again, I think that's it. I think when you start to go to remote locations, everything becomes so much more complex. Bandwidth gets more, limited. Access to, of course, to people, information as well, right? It's not like you're in a data center where you can, if all else fails, go and get somebody to restart the machine. You need to think about what protection, what risk mitigation you have in place with, your sort of digital footprint being very sort of wide. So yeah, I mean, they're the kind of customers that I've been working with very recently. So we could talk about a few more, I guess, as we go through. And of course, with a SaaS platform, or even if you host it yourselves, there is this kind of issue of security, right? You've got to think about how you make sure that um, any communication that you do, or any sort of initiation of these tasks or jobs, is ultimately in a secure manner. We had to think about this a lot for the SaaS platform, which we're going to talk about in Runbook Automation. And I think what you're going to talk about now, the runner, is a quite an elegant solution to solving that. How do I connect into different network segments or even different geographical locations, and still preserve the security?
Yeah, exactly, Justin. So looking here, diving into the architecture a bit, we could see we've got the concept of an enterprise runner. On the left hand, we've got Runbook Automation. So this is your central platform. Again, could be cloud-based, could be self-hosted. It's where you're going to store all your job definitions. We do have a built-in key store, or you can leverage external. We've got flexibility there. This is where we'll keep our schedules. And we could see, these things can be initiated through a variety of different actions. You can come into the Runbook Automation UI itself and execute a job. We've got a REST API available if you want to integrate with a existing portal or system that you've got today. Or you could just simply be sending an incoming webhook, and we'll be able to process that, pull data out of the payload, and then use that as inputs to start our jobs. Over on the right-hand side, we see, imagine these are different remote locations. Again, think about the use cases we talked about. Could be a satellite office, maybe it's a branch of a hospital, or it's a couple different, hotel locations. Whatever it may be, the idea is here, we'll put the enterprise runner inside that environment. It's going to have, direct access to the targets or things that you want to, uh, point to and manage, whether it's gathering diagnostics or running those remediation steps. Um, it's going to help manage that. Now, the beauty of this is from a security perspective, our enterprise runners are pulling outbound to Runbook Automation every 5 seconds to see if a job's available, or if there's a job in queue that it should pick up and run. If there is, you'll see a response will come back with the job definition. Could be a REST API call, could be an SSH command, could be running a script locally, either on the runner or on the target itself, depending on how you want to approach that. But the idea is it'll get that job definition in an authenticated response. So just like I go out and request a web page, my firewall, it sees that request come back and is expecting it. We're doing the same thing here. So you don't have to open any inbound firewall ports in your environment to facilitate the communication between our enterprise runner and the Runbook automation platform. And we found that to be very key at putting, when you get the security team on, maybe it's part of a POV, or you're getting into your deployment and they want to run through and make sure from a security standpoint that it's, an acceptable use, right? And things are going to be done in a secure manner. I've never had an issue of someone complaining about the way we've got this architected. And Justyn, I'm sure you've got some, live experience working with customers, right? Where you've seen, just how smooth using the enterprise runners can help facilitate that communication.
I do not have to deal with the firewall guys, right?
Yeah.
Which is a blessing. Honestly, I mean, the architecture of the runner is really quite flexible. You can deploy it however you choose. So if you want to run it in a container, you want to run it in Kubernetes, you can do that. You can also just simply run it on on a Linux or a Windows machine. So, because we've got that flexibility in architecture also, certainly from an evaluation perspective, that means it's a low friction. But also when you start to deploy this at scale, which is really what we're talking about today, there's automation gets exponentially more powerful as you start to go to scale, because this is not a one to a few, this is a one to many scenario. So these runners can be scaled up. You can have them a single per location. You can have multiples per location for extra resilience. And I think it's a differentiator for us as a platform. And I know, there are runners for all sorts of SaaS platforms. Git have runners. This is the way to do it. But actually, to run these capable of running automation either locally on the runner itself, where I might need to do a little bit of work, or remotely, kind of as the central point, like a bastion box that will then connect down to remote nodes, whether they be machines, they might be tills, they might be remote Kubernetes clusters. And I think, one of the things that I've seen now, I mean, we know that there have been some big shifts in architecture over the last 10 years, cloud native, in fact, probably 15 years now. This is moving quickly, right? But what I'm seeing is actually a combination in these shifts. So now I see customers um, who have got like I was at a toy manufacturer recently, big manufacturing organization, and they are got lots of edge computing, and they move to edge because of security. They move to edge mostly because of performance. But now in their manufacturing plants, they're all running their own local Kubernetes clusters to run applications on, because Kubernetes is very good at keeping workloads running. And I see the combination. Then I've got edge computing and sort of almost cloud native computing kind of approaches, and these are really starting to come together. But as they come together, they bring some problems, right? They bring that problem of, this is great that I've got, say, a manufacturing company out somewhere. I do have some local IT guys, but actually the mothership contains really the expertise. And how can they have access to this? Or even better, how can I stop these problems occurring in the first place? So how can I take an event that comes from that environment and do something meaningful with it to either save me having problems?
Yeah, and something else I'd like to add here, looking at the diagram, those boxes, they could be two different remote locations, or it could be two highly segmented networks in the same remote location. So, again, not having to open up and expose, firewall ports. Um, I also see another advantage, less security focused, but more preventing that noisy neighbor problem. You can have enterprise runners dedicated for certain teams. So as teams are executing their workloads, if they run a big file copy or something that's going to consume a lot of resources on the runner, that'll just impact the runners assigned to those teams. The other teams running their workloads won't be impacted. So it does help break up, execution and, up again, prevent that noisy neighbor problem that folks can run into.
Okay. So, was there anything else you wanted to cover, Corbin, or shall I go and get to the demo?
Yeah, no, yep, nothing else to cover. I wanted to hit some quick highlights here, talk about our architecture. But yeah, let's give the people what they came here for.
Yeah. Okay. So let me move a few things out of the way in a truly unprofessional kind of way. Okay. Look, I thought because there are multiple aspects to what Corbin mentioned about the operations cloud, which is the overall PagerDuty platform. I thought I'd look at this from two ways. It would be so easy just to dive into the automation side, but I actually also wanted to actually maybe also to look at this also from the event side. So, we know that as you deploy these different technologies out there, let's take Kubernetes, because again, I always find that's interesting, that when you're using something like Prometheus and you're emitting a ton of alerts, what are you actually going to do with that data? How are you going to use it in a meaningful way? So I actually wanted to first trigger some alerts in my scenario here, have PagerDuty pick them up and show maybe a little, for those of you that don't know the sort of the more of the incident response side, show you a little what it could look like with firstly with some automation deployed, but then secondly to go sort of a little deeper under the covers and show you actually how to then deploy that at scale across those those remote locations. So bear with me, I'm going to show you a couple of things. So I've got my operations console, things are looking totally great here, and I am actually going to jump between non-automated and automated. So this is kind of my non-automated response scenario. So I'm going to trigger an incident. This is actually a Prometheus alert that I'm going to fire in. I'm just going to do this manually. If anybody ever wants to send themselves some fake PagerDuty incidents as they try, you can go to triggerincident.com, pop your config key in. This is my personal site, so definitely no guarantees around it, but it does work and we use it all the time. So I've got my operations console, and this would be good if you had sort of a traditional sort of knock kind of scenario and you had some teams who were divvying up and triaging and things like that. But I'm just using this because I've got a scenario here where I've got a pod in a crash loop back off scenario. So for those of you that are familiar with the platform, it's been automatically assigned to my team. I happen to be on call, so I'm going to get a notification for this. And you can see this is all going to look very familiar to anybody who's dealing with these kind of, these kind of messages where you get from Prometheus, for example, or from Alert Manager, you get all of these labels and you get this data that comes through to give me a load of context. So first thing, my team have assigned me a set of actions that I can run. So these are, we call them automation actions, but I've got a set of actions that are specific for my scenario, for my service that I'm running. Okay, so I can do things like, I know that this is fixed in the past, so I might do an action that's human driven, which is increase pod capacity, because that works for me. I don't happen to have, a horizontal pod auto scaling running or anything like that. It's just what we do is when we have a problem, we can increase capacity. So this is not a fix. This is really about, keeping the service up as long as we can, and also potentially gathering enough information that at 9 o'clock in the morning, my devs, when they come in, they can actually fix this. So it's a good reason for automation. So I'm actually going to just start just by running a task, and I'm going to run this job here against my Kubernetes cluster, right? All will become a bit more familiar as we go through, but I wanted to show you. Okay, so I've attempted to scale here. I've got 15 replicas. I can't perform any further because the desired state doesn't change. Okay, so what I've done, somebody's gave me the ability to actually scale up these replicas, but put some guardrails around it. So this is going to stop inadvertent problems, accidents. So guardrails, we talk about these quite a lot. So within automation, it's great allowing, I don't know, people without the skills or the access or the security to actually run these remote jobs, but you still got to put some guardrails around this. So I've run that one thing, and that's allowed me to do that. I could typically run things like a rollback and other things if I wanted to do that. So I'm actually on call for this, so this is me just getting a call for that. I'm just going to cancel that. It's going to hassle me in a minute for not acknowledging within a period of time, as we do. Right, so that's kind of my first sort of foray in here. We're not talking specifically about remote operations, but I did want to show you that the automation can work as part of an event coming into the organization. Now, one of the things that's really important, and I get asked this a lot, is like, well, you've got a human involved here. Well, some of the tasks do require a human in the loop, right? They do. You know, there are some things that you probably won't trust to a machine for a considerable amount of time, particularly anything that carries some resource risk or a cost risk. You might want still a responder to be able to, to be able to action something. Now, I'm going to show you we can do things automatically as well, as we sort of layer this out. So to make any of these actions run automatically, I'm going to something that we call event orchestration. So this is where, and again, I'm not going into any depth, but event orchestration is where we can take any signal path and determine what happens as a response to that signal path. So I've got my my automation here, very, very simple. I'm going to route this to my service that I use for my remote store Kubernetes, all of the alerts that come through, and this is very simple. So all I'm doing is I can see if the event meets a particular condition. Okay, the alert name matches pod error state. Then what I'm going to do, I mean, I am going to set a couple of fields that are important, which is the FQ, DN, and path, because I need them elsewhere. But the important thing here is automation. So what I can do is every time that problem actually comes in, I'm going to try a response and remediation to actually restart those pods. Not great practice to have to manually restart pods or even automatically, because the scheduler should take care of it, but we still get told by customers that, well, sometimes if we've not written something particularly well, the subsystem can still need that restart. And of course, this doesn't have to be pod restarts. This could be anything you can imagine that you need to do to resolve an issue. So for example, it might be to clear some temp space down on a file system. It might be to add extra resource. It might be to run a SQL query to reindex or run a vacuum on Postgres or something like that. So anything that you can think of that you might need to specifically use to remediate can be built into that flow. When I see this message from my observability tool, whether it be New Relic, Datadog, or your homegrown tools, or maybe from some open source like Prometheus Alert Manager, or we have about 700 integrations, so chances are we've got you covered. As soon as I see that particular set of messages, then I can immediately run a reaction to that. So I'm going to save that. Now I've put that into my flow. What I'm going to do is go back to my original service. I'm actually going to resolve this. Actually, let me resolve it so I trigger a new one. Bear with me. Okay.
And Justin, while you're doing that, I'll say, the beauty of our platform is if you've got existing scripts or your admins have built things out today, we can ingest those as is. Our jobs can run a Python script and then turn around and run a PowerShell script if you run. So a lot of flexibility. You don't necessarily have to recreate the wheel as you look at implementing this automation platform.
And yeah, absolutely. And you've probably got runbooks already. And my runbook says, hey, if I see this kind of problem, get on my swivel chair, log into server A. Is this okay? Back on my swivel chair again. Is server B? Oh, actually, now I need to run that script. We can take all of those and sequence them and add the logic to say, if this happens, then do this, to help that automation runbook process. Anyway, let me trigger that incident again. Shameless plug again, triggerincident.com. Anyway, let me go through
You're gonna have
that.
to start selling ads on that too.
I am, yeah. I was thinking maybe. Anyway, so now I've got my initial problem again, and you'll see a different response. Okay, so first thing you probably want to do, I'm going to do a validation. Is there really a problem? Is the natural thing to do whenever you're told that there's an incident? Nobody believes it, right? Really? Or does it? I'll just log on and I'll check. Is that service really available? So this is a scenario. I've got my namespace travel duty's got some problems against it. So the first thing I'm going to do is, okay, I'm actually going to try and restart those. So I'll kill the deployment, have them restart. So actually, I've still got problems here, and I've started to grab the logs, tail the logs out of each of the containers. Yeah, because they're all replicas, they're bound to be the same here, I guess. So I'm getting this exec format error. So what I've done is I've initiated automatically a rollback. So I've gone back to my previous version, and we can see that everything's looking fine here. Now, just for fun, I'm going to run one of these actions again, like the increase pod capacity, just because I want to have some extra actions in here when I show you something at the end. So what have I done? I've been able to not solve the problem, but I've actually kept that downtime to an absolute minimum. And this is about getting the service up and running as quickly as possible, but also potentially it could be for helping gather metrics, gather logs that I could give to Mandy in the morning and say, hey Mandy, we had a problem, it restarted, but I've got all this information. I've got a Java heap dump. I've got here's my thread dump. Here's all the things that maybe you need. Here's a ephemeral container that's run up with all of my tools that I've got that I need to fix a problem. There we go, man. And it makes the job so much easier than saying, yeah, pods crashed, we restarted it, we moved on. Yeah, we don't really have the last logs or anything like that. All those kind of things can be rolled into this process. So I ran that ran automatically, and I ran a manual task in there anyway. It doesn't really do anything, but I did want to show it in here in my automation actions log, which shows me the kind of the replay of the things that have happened while I've had some problems. So, I ran that script, I tried the remediate, tried the second script in there, and I tried to run the increased pod capacity. Now, quick shameless plug before we go on to some of the other stuff here is that we are really digging in hard on something we call PagerDuty Advance, PD Advance, which is really our foundational Gen AI layer, which takes feeds, and we could have a whole session on that. Happy to do a demo at another point on that, but just want to show you this quickly. What of course Gen AI is really good for is looking at big complex pieces of data and saying, tell me the salient points, tell me the things that are really important. So it gives me a quick resume of all the things that have happened, how long it ran over, one remediation action, one diagnostic action. But I thought this was quite cool. It's advisable to investigate the exec format error encountered in the failed pods. Clearly that's the problem. That's why this crash loop back off happened here anyway. But it's pointed me to the bit that's important, just for thinking about. So that's the kind of I just do not have to get a user out of bed for this anymore. This kind of thing. Maybe we could have some logic in there that says, okay, right, if this is still not working, then we're actually going to then go down an escalation path. We're going to start ringing phones and things like that. So anyway, I wanted to show you from that side before we go to how is it done, because I think it's important to see kind of what we can do before we understand how we can do it. So what I'm going to do is give you a quick tour around the Runbook automation platform. Okay, it's available as SaaS, but you can self-host. Okay, this runs alongside the rest of the platform, close integrations together, easy to set up. Somebody wants to trial it, you're up and running in 10 minutes or so. Anyway, you'll see that I've got everything defined in here as projects, and the project might be a tenant for me, it might be a team. So if I've got a team who are specifically looking at remote store operations, I might have them running separately in their own environment. And I think this was as Corbin was talking about earlier, right? This is a way that you could say, okay, this is team A. They've got their own runners. You know, they can go and run and they can do what they like and they work however they like, but they're not going to impact any. I like the phrase. I think you said was it noisy neighbor. They're not going to. You know, they're not going to impact anybody around them. You know, that's the kind of kind of the thinking that you could have by doing that. In essence, anyway, I've got all my different teams in here, and I'm going to spend my time in this case in my production environment. One tip that I mentioned that I've seen work really well, because all of this job definition and the configuration could be stored as code, can be created as code, but can be stored as code. What you can do is actually have a life cycle, a software life cycle in here where you build all of your jobs in a specific in project, push them out to Git, and have Git pull them in, so nobody's dealing live with any configuration in production. So what have I got set up in here? I'm going to talk about nodes to start with. So my nodes are where I want to do my downstream work against. So they might be containers, they might be Kubernetes clusters, they might be individual servers, they might be VMs, and you can see that they're all defined in here with a ton of tags against them. Okay, so this can be completely automatic, so we can pull them in straight from AWS, from GCP, from Azure, from VMware, from your own CMDB, ServiceNow, things like that. So the idea is that this is minimal. But what is interesting, I think, is the fact that a lot of these have got all the tags that are associated with them, and that helps me direct which runner is actually called when we actually need to run a job. So again, my job kind of author doesn't really need to worry about how it's going to be run or where it's going to be run. That's all taken care of within this sphere of the node itself, and it'll become clearer in a second. So I'm going to go to my runner management now. My runners, as Corbin mentioned quite at some depth, are my my components that are going to run within my different locations or different network segments or different teams. I've seen them used for different versions of applications as well, where they want to run completely, version 1 in project 1, version 2 in project 2, and they got 2 completely separate runners. And you see that each of these are tagged, US East, APAC, EMEA, US West. They're all healthy. And for each of these runners, let me give you an example. So I've got my US to East runner here. Each of those, in this case, has tags associated with it. So any of my machines that are tagged East, and I can see a sample here. I mean, this would scale up to many. Anything that goes to the runner that where the node itself is tagged East will automatically be directed through that runner. So I can have really complex scenarios where I need to run jobs across different locations, but I only need to define them once, and my important thing is just make sure I've got some tagging against the node that actually runs. So how does that look practically? Well, let me try a command. So let's think about this. Late at night, you need to go and run a command across the entire estate. And are you actually thinking, oh, look, I need to run some in North America, some in EMEA, some in APAC. How am I actually going to do that? So if I select here, for example, all my nodes, okay, and I'm not bothered about their location, but I do want to run them just on Linux, okay. So there's all my Linux nodes, and I might want to run an important command. I don't know, might be want to check my versions of log4j or something, okay. And I might want to say, well, I don't want these all doing at once, so let me do 10 at a time. I mean, that could increase the threads, but there we go. So at that point, now I do not have to consider whether these are in EMEA, whether they're in APAC. This is automatically now running those commands across all of my different runners to each of those, and you can see that they match up. East is runner East, and East is web server. So you get this idea that, again, this is not, this is running in a true distributed scenario where each of those runners potentially could contain their own key stores. So I might have HashiCorp or CyberArk or Ficotic key vaults that are located on site. So I don't have to bring those and keep those keys centrally. This is all sort of geared up to, making sure that we can do this in the most secure way possible. And again, the idea is that, of course, we're going to pull logs centrally and execution logs and know that this has all worked well. So if I take a look here, you can see my 16 that ran. And I've got, each of the servers that have ran and where they've ran from and how they've ran. And there's my commands that are actually running. Okay, so I definitely want an audit of those kind of commands. But of course, I don't want to have to be worrying, oh, I've got to think about that this has gone down or this has happened. And of course, I can target any of those clusters, for example, directly from the event that's coming through the door. So anyway, that's kind of the idea of it, and that's actually how the technology works.
And
And then, of
Justyn,
course,
I noticed here you didn't have to type in 16 usernames and passwords to be able to execute that, right? So having that, that in a key store really makes things seamless.
and indeed, it could be each server or each node that I'm dealing with has a different key. I mean, I don't have to have shared SSH keys anymore. So each time that I go to an individual server, I could be going to a local vault to get keys that are regularly rotated. The potential for the level of security that this can give. I mean, this is really, least least privilege access. As we can give this. This is the idea that I can still run that command. I have the power that I need, but not anything extra. This is solely the idea of me having just enough to do my job. And of course, I'm showing you commands in there. They are configurable. You can turn that off if you figure I don't want people running shell commands, and that's totally fine. But what you can do also is then start to wrap up those commands in a job. And a job is simply a set of steps of commands. I'm going to show you this very quickly. Okay, because again, there's some complexity that we can layer on here. But in essence, 130, 140 different steps that I can actually run as part of any sort of remediation, any part of any task that I'm running. And these vary between something nice and simple, like running a command, through to running inline scripts or grabbing scripts from a remote repository, from interacting with cloud services like AWS, GCP, Azure, through to running Kubernetes jobs, for example, in here as well. So we're adding to these all the time. It's it's quite a we've got quite a healthy growth on plugins. So each of these will typically contain a UI that instead of having to go and work out all the kubectl commands, which you probably should know, but maybe you just need to use a plugin because this keeps things very simple. And if I want to have some sort of security, or I want to be grabbing things from a key store, in this case an API token, I can select that. I can select where I get that from, and I can define it in there. So I don't have access to the keys, just the location where those keys might live.
Because I'm sure
Okay.
no one's ever gotten woken up in the middle of the night for a username and password, right?
Anyway, yeah, and once I've created this job, I can choose exactly how it's run, whether it's run from an event, which is where we're talking about generally, but it could be a self-service job that and I have customers who do this, remote IT support. They need to clear down some environments. It might feel a little bit archaic, but this is how some customers want to work, right? Where they say, okay, I'm going to give you a big like a shopping list of the tasks that you can actually run. Here, a self-service portal that I can go in there and I can say easily, you know, I want to run the server updates and patches. Well, I can see actually that they're going to run on a scheduled basis, but you get the idea. And remember, although all the underlying architecture is then distributing this across you know these remote sites. So although the automation is cool, the fact that this is, you know, I'm not having to think about how it's going to run and how I get to that machine, and you know, is the firewall port open, or you know, all those kind of things, because this is, you know, automatically taken care of. Just wanted to show you at the end really was actually that job about response and remediation. I just want to just show you the definition, because although many of the steps that I showed you in there are very sort of linear, do this, do this, do this, do this, we also have quite a complicated, or not complicated, a capability of having, you know, more complex workflows in there, which I run within these rule sets. So these still have the jobs that run in there, but I can actually change the order in which they run. I can give them wrap logic around them, you know, to build up these kind of if this then that kind of scenarios. So that was it really from me. I would say, you know, all of my activity, everything that's happened here, everything that I've done today, whether I've been running those, you know, those commands, or I was running my you know, or I was running those remote diagnostics or those remediations, is all logged. I've got absolute evidence and an audit trail of everything that's taken place. There are tons of other things that I could show you on a demo, but I think I wanted to keep it fairly simple, even though I've gone through quite a lot of things on here. So I would ask, 10 minutes to go. Any questions?
Yes, we do have questions today. Andrew has several. So welcome back, Andrew. It's good to see you again. Cherie, I did answer your question in the chat, since that was something that we do have documentation on. She asked about event role configurations, about pausing notifications. There is actually a pause notifications setting for event orchestration, so you'll find that in the documentation. So hopefully that will be helpful for you. If not, come back to the comments and we'll work through it for you. So Andrew's got a couple of questions about some various things. So, and these are things I don't know the answers to, so hopefully you guys will be able to help him out here. So starting out, he's having trouble accessing key store files from a bash script in Runbook automation. Do we have documentation for how to do that? He's looking at an option with the text type can select a storage path to a password, but if the option type is file, and there isn't an option to select public or private key. So that's what's going on there.
Okay, that might be one for the commons, because I think it's
Okay.
quite a complex, quite a complex scenario. I mean, I think if we get into commons, we could probably answer it. Go through a mail. I'll be on there as well. So
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, Andrew, if you could write that up for the comments, just ask that as a product question. If Justyn doesn't catch it, maybe Rainer will, because it's a little earlier in his day as well. He's in Chile, so we'll be able to figure that one out for you. But Andrew does have a question then additionally about GCP. Do you guys know if there's another GCP workflow step for logging into BigQuery or anything like that? I haven't seen that on the workflow or anything like that. You could write your own, right? Like if someone's
you could write your own, but
cool.
I mean, I've had a lot of success where we've not had plugins, just using G-Cloud commands, and you can pass, you know, all of your credentials across as you know, a user service account, and you pass them across as a JSON object. You store them in your key store. So you know, I always would say with plugins, you know, we've got plugins for, you know, a lot of the, I guess, frequent tasks like starting up VMs and things like that. But for everything else, you know, G Cloud, AWS, Azure, they've all got awesome CLIs that we can use to build. I did some stuff with Cloud Run last week, and I used G Cloud commands, and it worked perfectly for me.
Yeah, awesome. And like for the rest of the Kubernetes and that kind of stuff, like definitely check out the webinar that's coming in December. There'll be new announcements about product enhancements and things there for sort of Kubernetes more generally as that stuff comes along. And yeah, so yeah, okay, so Andrew's trying to write his own plugin, and that's what he wants the credentials for. So we'll definitely take that one to the comments, see if we can get that one to go through, so you can put that together and everybody maybe can benefit from that, because if you'd like to open source it, that would be amazing.
Yeah, if I'll just comment real quick, I believe that file option, when you're doing a job option and you select file, that's for uploading a file to the system that could then be processed, copied, or moved somewhere. But yeah, definitely ask on the comments. But I believe in the key store, you can choose adding a password or you can add a public or private key. But they'll be able to help you with that.
Yeah, awesome. Some other things that may come up with as folks are looking at this, like, what kind of what kind of limits are we thinking about or looking at as far as like how many endpoints can you connect to per runner? How many runners can you have per server? Like, what's the architectural sort of scale of this potential thing?
So I have customers with running, sort of 20 million executions so 10 million executions a week, 60,000 nodes, things like that. So, we are pretty high up in the web scale for those kind of things. Now, is there going to be a limit? Probably, but if we do hit at that point, we resolve it, right? I mean, I think, I think for most organizations, 60,000 nodes managed is pretty good. But of course, there's always going to be somebody that pushes the barrier a little bit more, and this is not a bad problem to have.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Absolutely. So a question from Chris in the chat there. Would enterprise runners be able to continue running critical actions if the remote location goes offline or loses connectivity to the master server?
So
How much does it store down there?
yeah, so the answer is no. Honestly, I have seen we've been creative for some specific scenarios where we've used other versions of Rundeck to basically, if so, one of the things you could think about is maybe you could use open source Rundeck to to store some of those local jobs if they were that critical. If you're going to have them, we're tolerant to small outages, but it's when you get days of outage, what can you do
Yeah,
anyway? You know.
we heard you like Rundeck, so we put some Rundeck in your Rundeck.
Oh
And
yeah, you want Rundeck everywhere.
yeah, for sure. Awesome. Sweet. Um, does this also work with Windows task schedulers?
Yeah, I have customers that have replaced Windows Task Scheduler and cron with with our scheduling, simply because you know when you're using those kind of things, you have to end up thinking about, who do I notify if something fails? Where's my logs for all of this? This is all central, and it's all part of the platform. So, if you're using this for event-driven automation, there's no additional cost to use it for scheduled automation, for example. We don't really care how you are initiating those jobs.
Oh, so in contrast to sort of event-driven, if you were doing, you could use this also for sort of planned software maintenance and those kinds of things that you're also doing as well.
Yeah, definitely. Or webhooks, human driven even, right? Like self-service coming from your ITSM tool like ServiceNow or Jira or something like that.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thank you so much. We got 3 minutes left. But looks like we're in good shape with the questions. If you have anything additional that you think of later, go ahead and join the comments. We'll get you the answers, we'll get you to the right folks there. If we don't know ourselves, we'll take care of that. Agenda just posted some final parting calls to action for folks to check out more stuff and join us again for the next things we have coming up. Super excited to see how folks work through some of these things. I've been watching the guys release the runners and stuff on the release notes streams for the past several months. It's been really interesting to see how all this stuff has been evolving and now how people are using it and what they're accomplishing with it. So it's great to see it fully baked and into the product story and like out there getting success for people. So this has been great. So Justyn, Corbin, thank you guys so much for joining us. And for everybody else out there, we'll wish you an uneventful day and we'll see you again on demos in the new year. So take care, everybody.